G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Yesterday I put out a very short video regarding Barneybaby Joyce, the secret Kiwi. In that video I performed my rendition of a song dating back to about the 1930s, the words of which run: Izzy and Aussie, Izzy Lizzy, Izzy and Aussie, Izzy A, Izzy and Aussie, Izzy Lizzy, Izzy and Aussie, is he A? And I have no idea what the baritone opera star was singing about back in the day, but it seems to me that Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors and duly appointed minions now have a fairly major question to come up with an answer for. Is Barneybaby Joyce an Australian? Is he an Australian under Section 44 of the Australian Constitution, and is he fit? Is he eligible to sit in Parliament? Now, yesterday, when I made my little 32-second video, the story was that Barneybaby Joyce had been contacted by the New Zealand High Commission to Australia, and he'd been informed that because his father was a New Zealand citizen, therefore he was a New Zealand citizen, and he expressed it in Parliament in terms of he may be a New Zealand citizen. Well, guess what? Then the New Zealand Prime Minister went on record, public interview, and said Barnaby Joyce is a New Zealand citizen by descent. And a whole bunch of people have said, how can this be? How can anybody be a citizen of another nation without realising it? Well, there's a short way of looking at this is that in the 19th century, a whole lot of small nations decided to grow their population by conferring citizenship by descent on all offspring of all their male citizens. Bit like any Jew is permitted to go and return to Israel, you know? If you're a Jew, you can go back to Israel. If your father was Argentinian, you can go back to Argentina. You are an Argentine citizen. In fact, I once went to a party and a bloke called Marcus Torcus told me the story of how, because his mother was English, he was born and raised in England. He did his national service in England. He was taught how to run around in the boonies and carry a backpack and shoot at strangers by England. And then he migrated to Australia. And subsequently he received in the mail call-up papers because his national service status had been reactivated because England wanted him to go and invade the Falkland Islands. But his father was an Argentine, and therefore he was an Argentinian. And thus and because he was obliged by Argentine law to put in 2 years of military servitude. So Argentina invited him to go and sit on the Islas Malvinas, while the British invited him to come and invade the Falkland Islands, and he was supposed to attack himself while defending himself because he was a dual citizen. Right. Well, here in Australia, we Australians, by right of our Constitution, we will not tolerate anybody who has any allegiance to any foreign power sitting in government over Australians. That's what Section 44 of the Constitution says. No person who has any allegiance to any foreign power shall be deemed eligible to sit in any parliament in Australia, state or federal. Nowhere in the black letter of the law does it say anything about unknowingly, unintentionally, unwittingly, ignorantly, arrogantly, hubristically, unthinkingly. Nowhere does it say that if somebody who applies to stand for Parliament fills in the application, and when it says, are you an Australian citizen? Do you have any allegiance to any foreign power? And they say, yes, I'm an Australian. No, I don't have any allegiance to any foreign power, on the grounds that they know their father or their grandfather comes from somewhere over the seas, they're too lazy, too ignorant, too arrogant, too hubristic, too smug, too complacent to be bothered to even find out what nations they are a citizen of. I don't want that lazy, fat, smug, complacent, ignorant, arrogant, useless prick to be representing me. And that's the thing. Barnaby Joyce is my local member of parliament. Barnaby Joyce, when he stood in my local seat, was not eligible to stand in parliament in Australia. Barnaby Joyce fraudulently stood and was elected fraudulently in my local electorate. And before that, he was a senator in Queensland. Barnaby Joyce has fraudulently collected 10 or 15 years worth of parliamentary salaries. He has to pay that back. And either the Australian Electoral Commission calls for a by-election here in the seat of New England, or they simply say, well, Barnaby Joyce was not eligible to stand, so therefore whoever came second wins the electorate. And that means Tony Windsor's back in the game, doesn't it? Today, we've been regaled by the spectacle of our Prime Minister, who yesterday attempted to obstruct the course of justice by directing the High Court which way they should find on this matter of black letter law. And let it be said that Senator Brand asked, the Australian Attorney General, has been trying to rely on a 27-year-old minority finding by a progressive ex-justice of the High Court who found that, or who suggested, the rest of the court ruled against him and the case went entirely the other way. But Brandis is relying on the finding of a minority justice, a progressive justice, who said that there has to be some level of awareness of foreign citizenship. Whereas the Constitution says all you have to be ineligible is to have any foreign citizenship. In the same way that Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, black nigger, that's what it translates as, you know, from German to Austrian to Americanese. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Schwarz means black, nigger means nigger. Arnold Black Nigger. He's not allowed to be the American president because he wasn't born there. Here in Australia, we're a lot slacker than that. We allow people to, quote, naturalise themselves, unquote, as Australians. And we let them sit in Parliament. But if somebody is not prepared to search their own ancestry and say, where were my parents born? Where were my grandparents born? Well, you know, like all of mine were born here on the continent. If you try to join the Labor Party and the answer to those questions, where were my parents born? Where were my grandparents born? If the answer to those questions is overseas, the Labor Party pays a team of lawyers to backtrack your antecedents and find out whether you're eligible to stand. Apparently, One Nation doesn't do that. The Liberal Party doesn't do that. The National Party doesn't do that. The Greens haven't been doing it either, and that really pisses me off because when Scott Ludlam and Penny Waters resigned honourably because it turned out that one was a Canadian and the other one was a Kiwi, they did the right thing. They said, oh, look, that's what the Constitution says. We're not eligible. We'll just have to take the fall. Canavan, the secret Italian whose mother signed him up for Italian citizenship without his knowing, without his signing anything, without his saying anything when he was 25 years old. So he says, oh no, he hasn't resigned. He's just referred himself to the High Court. Barneybaby Joyce, not only is he not resigned, he's still functioning as the Minister for Agriculture. He's still functioning as the Minister for sucking the water out of the Murray-Darling Basin. He's still functioning as the Deputy Prime Minister, even though he's a dual national citizen of New Zealand. And he's therefore under the Australian Constitution, according to the reading of every constitutional expert who has given voice on the matter for the past month, ever since Scott Ludlam and Penny Waters were found to be dual nationals. Therefore, Barneybaby Joyce is not eligible to sit in Parliament. And it merely remains for the High Court to confirm that fact. Right, so after yesterday's effort of the Prime Minister attempting to obstruct the course of justice, today we had the Liberal Party suggesting that, oh, well, maybe there's 5 people in the Labor Party who've got a foreign name or a foreign ancestor, so we'd like to refer them to the High Court. And then we had Julie Bishop, the Australian Foreign Minister, suggesting that by attempting to uphold the Australian Constitution, the Labor Party was undermining the government of Australia. Yeah? How's that for spin? The fact that the Australian government has a majority of 1 on the floor of Parliament And the Australian Deputy Prime Minister has been found to be a citizen of New Zealand by the New Zealand government because he inherited citizenship by descent because his father was a Kiwi and he never ever got off his arse and renounced it until it was too late. Too little, too late, too little, too late. He's announced that today that he renounced his Kiwiship on the weekend. He was told of his Kiwiship on Thursday. He's been projecting scorn and contempt for anybody who didn't realise what nationality they were for a month. Methinks he doth protest too much. The guilty flee when none pursue. Ask Billy Wobblestick, the renowned Australian playwright who paddled his bark canoe to England and is known there as a great historian. Wobblestick, shaker the spear. So, by the wattle, with the magpies carolling in the background, I say unto you, anybody who says that it was terribly wrong for the Australian media to ask the New Zealand Labor Party to ask the New Zealand government if Barneybaby Joyce was actually a secret Kiwi, a closet Quisling, a turncoat, a Fifth-Columnist, pretending to be an Australian parliamentarian. Was he really actually a Kiwi? That's not the Australian Labor Party undermining the Australian government. What that is the Australian Liberal National Party pretending to be fit to be a government when their Deputy Prime Minister is ineligible to sit in Parliament. That's what it is. The Australian government is not legitimate. They are a bunch of fraudulent bastards, depending on Barneybaby Joyce pretending to be fit to stand as a Member of Parliament in Australia. Hoist on his own petard. A petard, colloquially, is a little fart. It actually translates as a small mortar. Hoist on his own petard. Barneybaby Joyce, the secret Kiwi, the closet Quisling, not actually fit and proper person to sit in the Parliament of Australia. He's a fraudulent Centrelink scammer. He's been sucking at the taxpayer's pocket, holding a position he is unqualified to apply for. I want to see Centrelink's compliance department go through that bastard with a fine-tooth comb. Because, as the baritone opera star used to sing it back in the day, is he an Aussie, is he Lizzie, is he an Aussie, is he, hey, is he an Aussie, is he Lizzie, is he an Aussie, is he, hey? And apparently he's not. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. The Australian Constitution, Section 44, protecting us from turncoats and quislings and pretenders with foreign allegiances. Ciao.